What's up, everybody? Ben here. I've got a problem with my RMAX and I wanted to do a video over it because apparently it's a common problem. So over here I got my 2-seat RMAX XTR on the lift, and I walked in and there was oil underneath it, and so I just wanted to researched it a little bit, and I kind of dug into it a little bit and found out that I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's a pretty common problem. So I figured it'd be a good opportunity to do a video about it. So check it out. This is a 2022 Yamaha Wolverine RMAX 1000 2-seat XTR model. It really doesn't matter which model of RMAX you have. They all have the same transmission and engine and drivetrain. There's a slight difference in 2-seaters and 4-seaters and the trim levels, but as far as the problem that I'm talking about today, I believe it's the same, and it affects all years from what I understand. So basically I was doing some maintenance. I brought this thing in and noticed there was and I've already soaked it up twice, but basically the engine will drip out all of the oil that's in it. And I did a fresh oil change and new oil filter and all the stuff, and turns out there is a somewhat common problem where the side of the engine, I guess the stator cover, has a gasket that has like a kink in it or something, and it starts to leak over time. So you can see there's just a puddle of oil underneath the passenger side of the engine, and it just drains onto the floor. I thought maybe it was an oil filter. I thought maybe it was, one of these covers or something like that, but I've looked into it and did some research online, and turns out this is a pretty common problem. So I wanted to get into it. I'm not gonna go back and show you how to take off these plastic pieces, but it's pretty obvious. These are the pieces that I've removed. One kind of exterior piece. This is the inner fender well in the back, and then a couple of these small pieces under the passenger seat and the console. It's just a whole bunch of these clips like that. Some 10 millimeters and some of those plastic clips. We'll get all of those parts off. I'm not going to redo all that, but under here. And so I believe what's next is I need to remove the oil or the fuel tank. So I wanted to kind of start the instructional video here. I'm going to start getting into that. I do have a RMAX service manual. I use this for everything on all of my machines when maintaining and whatnot. And I've got a fancy bookmark here, and to my service stuff, but I'm gonna have to find the area for disassembling the engine side cover. And from what I understand, I need to remove this and this, and there's a gasket that is from the side case to, I believe this is the stator cover. This gasket has a leak at the bottom. There's a bad spot in them. And then this is the water pump that has an O-ring on it. So I'm gonna spill all the coolant, I'm gonna spill all the oil. Well, the oil's already out, it's on the ground. And then, or I'm gonna drain those two, or I'm gonna drain the coolant, and then I'll spill whatever's in the hoses, I guess. And then start disassembling those things and get this fuel tank out. And we'll get into it. We'll see. After, like I say, researching online, these are the two parts that I believe I need. This is the replacement side stator cover gasket. There's a part number for you. And this is the O-ring that goes around that water pump. There's a part number for you. And I ordered these on, I think, like Rocky Mountain or something like that, and got them. It took a while. It took a few weeks. I think they weren't necessarily on back order, but they had to come from someplace. But so that's it. We'll get into it. So notice when you take these out that hold the, they have a big like flat washer and a pretty long 10 millimeter head bolt, but there is also a little metal, it's like a spacer in there. This little thing, don't lose those. It's, it helps keep the bolt from smashing that rubber grommet. All right, so what I just did is loosened 4 of these 12 millimeter bolts, 12 millimeter head bolts. 2 from down here and 2 from here on each side of that. Sorry, it's not quite focusing, but the whole purpose there was to just get this bracket out. It does have these rubber bumpers. You want to hang on to those. It's a little frame that holds the gas tank in. Okay, so now I'm going to take out this bolt and this bolt to get this bracket out. And I believe the fuel tank will be free. Structurally, I'll be able to get the hoses out. Looks like I might have to take out this seatbelt harness bolt as well. I'm not sure about that though, but I'll look into it. Okay, so that comes out as one piece. Interesting to point out that those 2 14 millimeter headed bolts hold in this bracket that secures the fuel tank, but it is also the anchor for the passenger side seat belt buckle. So be sure you torque those properly. You don't want those coming loose. That's a safety hazard. So interesting how one thing leads to another with the bracketing. Okay, so now I'm gonna disconnect the vent hose for the fuel tank. It's pretty simple. You can do it with your fingers. Just pull that out of the way. And the fuel line is going to take a clip, and then you can pull it back. And then there's a harness right there. Okay. Nope, there's a bolt up there. Okay, so I did not video me removing this floorboard plastic piece that I was battling, but if you cuss at it just the right way, it'll come out. Luckily it's pretty, pliable. You can just bend it like a taco to get it out of there, and that's what it took. So it's dirty. I'm gonna clean that before I even proceed, just because I can't stand to see all that, and I don't want dirt getting into fuel and oil areas. I'm gonna have that motor open. So I'm gonna vacuum that out real quick, and as you can see, we use this on construction site mostly, and some agricultural purposes. So I'm going to clean that up before I proceed. All right, so I got that cleaned up. Going to remove this last 10mm headed bolt for the fuel tank. Making sure to get the washer and the spacer. Those are 3 different pieces there. And now it should be free. So let's see. Lucky me, I have a full tank of gas. So this is gonna be kind of heavy. Of course, I didn't know I was gonna have to do this, so I recommend either draining the tank or just doing this whenever you have an empty tank. Of course, the challenge is you don't really know when you're gonna have an oil leak, and I didn't know, so. Okay. So took a little juggling. All right, so got that cleaned up a little bit. To review on the fuel tank removal, this is the page in the service manual. So took out this bracket, those were 12 millimeter head bolts. Took out this bracket with two 14 millimeter head bolts, and then took out the fuel tank with 10 millimeter, 10 millimeter, and 10 millimeter. Those have those washers and bushings with them or whatever. Be careful because these rubber pads are attached to this bracket, and these rubber pads are attached to the floorboard. So that's it for the fuel tank. I will, of course, disconnected those hoses, you know, like up there in the harness, hose, and vent hose. So that's that. This is what you'll have when you're done. Fuel tank sitting on the ground and a big empty space in the middle. So next thing I'm gonna do is drain the coolant, because we're gonna take out this water pump. And the low point drain is right here. I believe that's an 8 millimeter head bolt. I'm gonna open that up, and I've got a bucket underneath the car now, so I'm gonna start that. Kinda cool, you can get a wrench on it from this angle instead of a socket from down below. Make sure to get your left and right correct, because it's backwards being on top of the bolt. Luckily, if the bolt falls, it goes straight into that bucket, so I'll be able to get it. But I don't want to fight it much, because I don't want it to spray all over the place. I just want to get the bolt. Got it. And then there's that little copper washer on it. Okay, so I'm gonna let that drain. I probably need to take off the radiator cap so that it can vent and it'll flow faster. Figure that out. Okay, I'm gonna see if this helps the flow at all. Under the hood. Maybe. Yep. I'm just gonna leave it like that. It's obviously depressurized, and you can hear it flowing. Yeah, a lot more flow. Okay, I'm gonna leave it till it drips. It'll probably be 15 minutes or so, maybe less than that. And I'll push the hoses and watch it change. Okay, moving on to the cooling system. This is the diagram in the service manual. Essentially, I'm going to be disassembling this portion here, taking the water pump out, and this hose will just be disconnected. So I've completed the training. You can, see while it squeeze on the hose, I can get a little bit more, well, I guess not. Anyways, so I feel like after I've squeezed on the hose quite a bit, and I think I've got everything out of it. So I'll disconnect. I think I'm gonna disconnect up here first, this top one. That way, in case this line has any coolant in it, it'll run on down before I disconnect all these. I just don't want to spill a bunch all over the place. This is a 6mm socket head. The hose clamps also have a Phillips screwdriver head. I just avoid using those just because they strip out easier. If you have a nut driver that's a 6mm, it's probably easier than using a ratchet like I am, but this is what I got. Nice, no spilling at all. I did clean around this area with some, well, I sprayed off the whole machine first, but I did clean with like some carb cleaner just to try to make sure there's no grease and crud and sand and stuff that's going to fall into the engine. Tuck that away in there. Okay. Hoses are disconnected, so now I have an 8mm. Just cracking them all loose first. Gonna do my best to keep track of the order of these bolts with my handy little bolt hardware tray. I think these bolts are all different lengths. The first two on the top there, they are different lengths. That one's quite a bit shorter. A little bit of coolant in there, as expected. And there's our O-ring. My O-ring appears to be perfectly fine, nice and clean. No issues there. All right. Now I'm going to take off this oil line. I expect some oil to come out of here. As you can see, there's a banjo bolt with copper washer. I think I can just leave that like that. So I'm just gonna okay, so now there are 8 of these bolts. These are all the same, and they're all 8mm hex heads. Just gonna go around cracking them loose first. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are all the same bolt. Down here, there's a 9th one. That's also an 8mm head, but it's a different bolt. First of all, it's black. And it had a sealant on it of some sort. I believe it's ready to come off. Okay, so pulling that off was kind of interesting. It has, even though all the fasteners are loose, it has quite a bit of force holding it on just from the magnet. So it kind of had to yank against a magnetic pull, and you could kind of feel the difference. So anyways, here is our problem. The whole reason I have this leak is the bottom seal. I mean, it tore, of course, the gasket, tore when I removed it, but there's obviously a place down here that wasn't making very clear contact. All right, so I am not going to unbolt these here. So that harness is kind of tethered. So I'm just going to leave it laying here and try to clean up this edge and get the rest of the gasket off. all I've got to do is remove the old gasket, make sure that edge is clean, and then I will attach the new gasket. As you can see, it's just like paper. So. I don't think a razor blade is the best thing for this because I feel like I'm gouging this aluminum a little bit, but I really don't know what else to do. I'm just trying to be as gentle as possible and stay on the same plane. Okay, so I am not a professional. I think now's a good time to point that out. But from my research that I've done with paper gaskets, you saw I just kind of razor bladed it off. I did take the blade out of my handle and just kind of did it by hand. So it leaves these fine little marks in the aluminum surface. You can see there, particularly in places where it's kind of stubborn, around the bolts. So that's not a big deal as long as it's real fine scratches or markings. I think I got the cover pretty well cleaned up. And like I say, around the edges, you'll see some fine marks just from my razor blade. As long as you can't like catch a fingernail on it, you know what I mean? Like if you're scratching that with your fingernail and you can feel it catch a nail, you know, and as long as it's not deep, you know, as long as it's not deep, you're going to be okay. The paper gasket should make up for the difference. The factory finish is quite a bit finer than that, but I guess worst case scenario, I could sand that a little bit with real fine sandpaper, but I'm not going to. I don't feel like any of my gouges are deep hardly at all. Also, I will point out this has I think that's an O-ring in there. So I'm just going to get the new gasket out and lay it on there. I've seen or read different theories about either soaking the paper gasket in oil or putting a little bit of silicone sealer on it, on parts of it or all of it or whatever. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to stick a factory gasket right back in place the same way as the one I took off. I don't want to get a bunch of goop on there. So I just pulled the dowel out of this cover and I put it back in there. There's two dowels right there and right there that kind of hold the gasket for you while you get it in place. So those are up there. I'm going to just hold the cover up. Okay, confirmed we're clean. I am just going to try to line this up. The magnet will grab this and pull it tight, I think. I'm trying to spin this little thing right here so that it matches this slot. This does not turn because it's attached to the motor, which is not turning. However, I can turn the impeller on the back side of this to line that up. I think I've got it about where it was. I tried not to rotate it much while I had it out. I'm gonna try not to. Dang, that's no joke. I'm just kind of putting in a bolt over there and threading it a couple of turns just to make sure that gasket kind of holds where I believe it should. I don't want the gasket to be in the wrong spot and get it pinched. Okay. So you can kind of feel when you push the screw in or the bolt in if it's catching that gasket or not. Plus, I can see directly into those holes and they all look clear. So I think I'm lined up good. See, you can look directly into those holes and you can tell that the gasket is lined up properly. Just obviously got to tighten the bolts to squeeze it back in. Okay, so those 8 bolts are all identical. They are all the same size and shape. All right, after getting all of those 8mm head bolts in, there's 8 of them around the case. There is this extra bolt, or this other bolt that's the same size, but it's a different material. And it has, the book calls for a replacement. So I just don't have that bolt. So I'm going to try putting Teflon tape on the tip here. It appears that it has some sort of sealant on it. Sorry, I'm trying to get it to focus here. But I don't know what it is. So that's what it looks like. I'm trying to zoom in and focus the best I can. And so I'm just gonna wrap some Teflon tape around the back, the end of that, and see if that works. I don't know if this is going to be a problem or not. I'm probably gonna go ahead and just order this bolt. But for now, I'm just gonna try this and see if it works. So there we go. I kind of freshened up the Teflon on it. Again, I'm assuming that bolt has it looks like it has some sort of sealer on the end of it. I don't think it's thread locker. I think it's a sealer. So okay, so I'll just go around in a crisscross pattern. I'm just barely putting some ugga-dugga on these. I will come back with a torque wrench and get them correct. Okay, the factory spec torque value is 10 Newton meters. I'm going to start up here. Crisscross pattern. 10 Newton meters is not very much. This is my smallest torque wrench. And when it hits that, you'll barely be able to feel it. Try this guy. This bolt down here that is different is also 10 Newton meters. Okay, I've got water pump cover. I've got a new O-ring in it. I'm trying to make it stay. It has these little indents that are supposed to help it, but I'm just gonna have to feel it out because it kind of wants to pop out on one of them. So the shortest bolt goes here. The medium bolt goes here. And then the three longest bolts they're all the same. They go in the other three holes. Looking pretty good. Crisscross pattern, 10 Newton meters. Now I slip the radiator hose or the coolant hoses back on. They have a Phillips, or you can use a 6mm socket. Don't over torque them. Don't forget to put the coolant drain bolt back in. I left mine off for no particular reason. I guess I feel like it'll help vacate better. Next is this oil line with a banjo bolt. Just gonna make sure it's clean on both sides. Keep the copper washer on there intact. Factory torque spec is 17 Newton meters on both of those bolts. I'm still going to use my small torque wrench for this. It is within that range. Okay. All right. Reassembly of the engine is complete. Now I'm going to clean up my workstation a little bit here, get my tools out of the way. I'm just going to set the fuel tank back where it belongs, hook it up, and put in fluids. I'll put in oil and I'll put in coolant, and then just fire it up. Remember to make sure your little rubber pads are installed in the bottom of the footwell. Front bolt. I think it's worth noting that that front bolt right there, it's the only one that is not slotted. You'll see how this one has a slot, this back one has a slot. So the front one is a hole, so I recommend you get it lined up, and then you have room to wiggle around to get the rears, or the rear and the side one in. And then don't forget this clamp to hold the fuel line on. And they do have those spacers plus the washer. So like I said, I'm just gonna test this like this, so I'm not torquing those bolts and I'm not putting in these cross members or anything yet. I'm gonna put fluids in and run the engine for a little bit and make sure my oil is not leaking out. All right, and if I recommend you watch my RMAX oil change video. I've done a service video for the oil change, transmission service, and differentials for front and rear on RMAX, and that'll give you more insight on what to do now. But basically, I don't know how much oil this machine has lost, so I'm just gonna put in some oil until I see it on the dipstick, and then I'll start it. Then up here, the coolant, this takes green coolant. I'm gonna put in some of this, and that's that. I'll just put it in there till it comes to the top, and then I will start the vehicle with the radiator cap off so that it will burp. There's probably a Yamaha procedure for filling the coolant, and I will look into that. But on like the YXZ, it doesn't work, so I don't even do it. So I'll get to that in a minute. All right, so I did some heat cycles, got my fluids right, and I think we're in good shape. It's been overnight, I let it sit, and I came back and did notice one more drip, so I actually went back and retorqued my bolts and checked a few things, and then cleaned it up again and let it sit again, and I believe the leak is gone. So I'm just gonna do a time lapse now of just reassembling these things. I didn't show you how I took these plastic panels off. I'm not really gonna go through the assembly and disassembly of removing the plastic panels. Just know that everything you see has to come out. This floorboard piece is by far the biggest, hardest piece to get out just because it's huge. So you gotta twist it, and actually the book calls to take the dash out, which I'm not doing. Obviously I didn't do that, but that big floorboard piece just kind of tucks under these lips, and that's a struggle. That's hard to do. So I'm gonna start with putting the steel braces back on, just as you saw me disassemble earlier around the fuel tank, and then I'll start putting the plastic back on. right, got her done. Got her running good, nice and put back together. I am gonna clean this thing up a little bit, and then we're gonna get back to work. It's got a lot of stuff to do. Oh, I gotta adjust that. We got a lot of stuff to do. Back to the job site. Thanks for watching. I recommend you watch my other maintenance videos regarding the RMAX. I have a video on oil change, on differential service, and also on transmission service. So I'm gonna mount my roto packs back up and get on the trailer. Thanks for watching.